Welcome, everyone. My name is Corinne, and I will be your moderator today. I am excited to welcome Jeff Grogan, Fast Track Technology Advisor with Henry Schein, as our speaker tonight, as he will be providing a comparative review on 3D printers. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to go over some housekeeping. If you have a question, please type it in the box labeled Have a Question, and we will answer them live at the end. If you would like to contact Jeff directly, please click on the envelope icon in the speaker bio widget on the left side of your console. Additionally, if you would like to schedule a demo experience or request a quote, please click on the Schedule Now widget on the right side of your console. And lastly, Henry Schein is not offering CE credit for viewing or attending this presentation live or on demand. Jeff, welcome, and thank you for being with us tonight. I'll pass it on over to you.
Thanks, Corinne. And good evening, everyone. Really excited to be with you this evening as we kind of look at some of the relevant printers in the market today and kind of go through the ins and outs of 3D printing. So without further ado, here's kind of what we're going to get into this evening. I have some housekeeping stuff of my own, so we'll go through just a touch of an introduction. I have to talk about digital workflow, scanners, and 3D printing workflows before we can get to printers, just because of where those fall in the process of it all. I'm going to spend the bulk of the evening kind of talking about the different printers out there and kind of highlighting some of the different aspects of those. And then I would like to hear from you all. So save your questions for the end, and we'll take a little bit of time there at the end to get into questions maybe you have. So a little bit about me, just to kind of kick off the night. I started with Schein back in about 2015. Actually, the running joke is I started on Groundhog Day, and I've only been in the CAD/CAM space. So it is literally scanners, printers, mills, cone beams, all of that stuff every day, all day. So kind of the running joke there. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my family. So that's my lovely wife, Jill, my two kids, Luke and Nathan. And everybody say a little prayer for me because we have a little baby girl expected in about a month. So you can send them this way, and I would be eternally grateful. To put some of the evening in context, I do like to make sure that we look at the evening for what it is, right? So first of all, it's a big topic. 3D printing, or as you get into digital workflows in general, big topic. We are going to cover a lot of ground, but we're not going to cover all of the ground. So if you want to get into anything else, please, use those widgets. Either email me or schedule some time, and we can dive into some of those other topics as you have questions there. There's also no silver bullets. So what may be good for the goose isn't necessarily good for the gander. So you need to kind of look at your internal perspective view and make sure that you are finding the right tool for the job. That'll be a recurring theme for this evening is kind of identifying the right tool. A big caveat here, or a big asterisk here. I've been in this space for about 8 years. I've done a lot. I've experienced a lot. I've been able to be very intimate with all of these different technologies. What you hear tonight is based on those experiences. They are my opinions, and we're all adults here, so we're all allowed to disagree with those. But I'm giving you based on what I have done. These are my opinions. And lastly, I still like to learn. That's how I kind of got into this position, is just by absorbing and being a sponge. So if you know something I don't, reach out, let me know. I always like to learn more. So hopefully you can learn a little bit tonight. Maybe we can all grow together. All right. I do like to start off with the real reason we're all here for tonight is to talk about the fun stuff you can do with a 3D printer. So a small collection of my own. I'm very popular amongst the 5 to 8 year olds and around white elephant parties around Christmas. So when you get yours, you can make all kinds of goofy stuff. But I promise that'll be kind of the last nonsensical part of this. As we look into the rest of the evening, really the place we need to start and kind of talk high level first is really the digital workflow overall. And as you look at that, this is that 30,000 foot view. It's going to start with patient records. It's going to move into imaging, whether that is X-ray or whether that is digital impressioning. You have to start with an image of some kind. That image is going to get manipulated in software. So we're going to have to talk a little bit about software in a second, because you have to create something. that something is going to get then produced. Now, whether you design it yourself or somebody else does it, whether you produce it yourself or somebody else does it, those are still the basic steps before we can get to patient delivery. When you look a little bit more specifically at 3D printing, 3 basic steps: scan, design, print. We can't talk about printing until we talk about scanners. So I'm going to spend just a second here, high-level view. Again, based on my experiences, there's really 6 major relevant brands in the market. They all have different fits. They fit different office needs out there. But these are really the 6 major scanners in the market. And if you don't have a scanner, you need one. To get into any of the digital workflows, you have to start with a digital scanner. We can have this conversation later, but really I needed to start with that and kind of put that out there that you gotta have a scanner to be able to play in the rest of the sandbox. Second thing you have to do is you got to talk about design. Whatever it is that you want to print, and you can print just about anything. There are materials aplenty out there. But whatever you want to print, you have to design it. Short of some of the modeling software that I will demonstrate here in a little bit, there's some sort of software manipulation before you can print. What you need to be thinking about here more than anything is, number one, what do you want to print? And number two, who is going to do the designing? So you get into this debate of, is it something that you outsource, you pay somebody else to do it? Or is it something that you do yourself? There's pros and cons to both. Outsourcing, you have no burden of design. You don't have to worry about investment or training or team. You simply take a scan, send it off to somebody else, receive the file back that they created for you. You pay them a little bit of money and you print. In-housing, you are going to have to invest in software. So you need to identify what software that is. You have a team member, yourself, or maybe one of your team, that needs to be able to be trained and use the software, but your costs come down because you're taking the burden of design yourself. So that's a balance that you can put it on. One of the beautiful things is that with 3D printing, typically it's non-urgent. So you get to choose which route that you go. Finally, we're to 3D printers. And so as we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the rest of the night, these are going to be the 4 printers we're going to talk about. These are not the only 4 printers in the market. I mean, there's lots of printers out there, but these tend to be the names that you continue to see time and time again. These are the ones that are the most relevant, the ones that are most common, and the ones that are the most trafficked. So these are going to be the 4 that we highlight tonight. And as I kind of broke down and thought about how to best give you the information to make educated decisions, I kind of came to this conclusion for my review of information. We need to look at the system component and a little bit about how they got there in the market. I did want to do a demonstration of software and kind of show you some of the interface in the 3D printer. We're going to talk about unique features, what sets that system apart, an overview of materials and the delivery system of the materials. And then lastly, I put together an overview of each printer. Your initial steps, so like install, training, support, some of the tech stuff, so resolution and speed, looking at materials, looking at kind of an overall value proposition of where you might best position that in your practice. So we'll get to all of that, but I've already said it once, I'm going to say it again. You need to find the right tool for the job. And so there's all different types of hammers. If you go to a hardware store, there's all different types of hammers. And you can pretty much pick up any one of those hammers and go build a house. If you're trying to do trim work with a sledgehammer, or you're trying to frame walls with a little tack hammer, not necessarily the right tool for the job. So as we go through all of this, you need to start thinking about what's important to you. So maybe that's an indication. Maybe you're looking to print a specific thing. So you need to find a printer that allows you to do that. Maybe it's a material. Maybe you're after, whatever indication that is, you want it made a certain way. So we need to identify a material that's right for you. It could be throughput. Throughput has to do with volume. How much are you going to print? So do you need lots or do you need little? Is it onesie twosie or is it major production? So that has to do with throughput. Speed. As you look at your workflow, how quickly do you need these things? Are these things that you're going to have your patient return in 3 weeks and pick up? Or are these things that you're going to keep the patient in the chair and do it same day? And lastly, budget. How much are you willing to spend? And I should say lastly, workflow. So budget, obviously, we're going to be looking at pricing of some of the systems, and then workflow. How do you want it to work in your practice? And that's more of a process standpoint. Who's going to do the work? How easy is it to do the work? How dirty is the work? So those are kind of the things that we're going to look at as we identify these systems. First up, we're going to talk Formlabs. These were in no particular order, but Formlabs comes up first. They were kind of the original 3D printer in the market. So if you go back several years, everyone that kind of started to be that early adopter of this technology, a lot of them had Form 2s. That was kind of the first clinically based 3D printer out there. They're now on the Form 3D Plus, which is a dental specific printer. So it has all of the dental resins with it. And so you have the Form 3D Plus, which is the printer. Their Form Wash is the wash unit. Form Cure is the cure unit. So they do have a 3-part system all in family. Preform is their software. So that's what you call a nesting or a CAM software. That's actually the interface with the printer itself, communicating how to print it. And when I show this, let me change my screen here real quick. When I show this software, there's a couple things that I wanted to be able to show you from an ease of use standpoint and just an overall review standpoint. So the first of which is just bringing in a simple model, putting it on a build platform, and looking at kind of a test of speed. So here I have my printer settings. I'm printing with a draft resin, which is a model resin. Here is the model that I created. And if I wanted to put a base on that, I can simply just select where my base is. And you can see this one model was going to take roughly about an hour. Formlabs is an SLA printer. That means it traces the part. So it does get also into an additive effect where if I wanted to print 2 models, my time goes up. 3 models, up a little bit more. But their software itself, and kind of the main takeaway here, really easy to use. I do really like Preform. It's not difficult to learn, and it's pretty foolproof. So if I wanted just to put something flat on the build platform, there it is. If I'm going to do something a little bit more complex, if I bring in, for example, a night guard, to change materials, pretty easy. Here's my printer. I would simply choose the resin type and then my layer thickness to apply. I'm going to position this guy the way that I want it to be oriented. So I would want that surface down. And then if I wanted to build supports, their software, again, very easy to use. I can just auto-generate supports and I'm ready to print. So even if you get things that don't have a flat base, because of the auto-generate feature, because of some of the ease of selection, it's just a pretty foolproof software. Both Preform and Rayware, which I'll show you in just a second, have the ability as well to take a scan, a direct scan, bring it into the software, and create a functional model with no other software interface. Pretty cool feature. So when I bring in this file, here is just a scan that was taken. You'll see up here in the left-hand corner, this little wizard that's going to allow me and walk through the steps to create a dental model with just a couple clicks. So the first thing it's going to ask me to do is to orient the model how I want it oriented. So I'll bring that surface down. My next step is a plane cut tool. So all I need to do is drag this slider to where I want it. So if that was the appropriate spot for this model, I'll hit next. If I wanted to extrude that base, so from that line, if I wanted that base to grow, I could. I'll just leave this one where it's at. When I hit create, you're going to see it's editing that model. It's going to go through and take what was a non-printable object. And I now have a flat-based solid model. So you can see with a little less material, a little less time. But those are kind of the three things. I'm going to look at those three different components in a couple of the different softwares. That's your basic functionality of Preform. Pretty easy to use, pretty straightforward, and a little bit of feature to it that makes life a little easy, especially if you're going to do models. Let me hop back into the presentation here, and we'll kind of move forward with Formlabs Materials. So I'll kind of give away the reveal here in a second, but Formlabs is a resin, a cartridge-driven system. All of their resin is cartridge-driven. That's good because it makes it very, very easy, but it is going to limit you to the materials offered by Formlabs. Good news is they have almost everything you would want. So they have a couple different model materials. There is a true model material made for accuracy in working models, a draft material, which is intended to be a little bit faster. So if you're going to thermoform any sort of appliances, any printing in mass, a little bit faster material. They have an occlusal guard, surgical guide, denture materials, temporary and permanent crown. So you have just about everything you would want, but it is going to have to come packaged as that cartridge, which kind of leads me into unique features. So what makes Formlab and kind of sets Formlab apart, it's a very easy system to use. Pop a cartridge in the back, press play. Very easy application just to get something printed. When I'm done printing, this build platform slips off of the printer, so you can see it here. And it slips off of the printer and directly into the wash unit. So very little touching needed. Just makes it a very easy workflow. That's kind of been a recurring theme thus far with Formlabs. It's just very easy to use. And then as we get to the overall, here is Formlabs, this is the product. Like many of the printers we're going to talk about, Formlabs is a drop ship. So if this is the right printer for you, it's going to show up in a couple boxes. You take it out of the box, you set it on a counter, you plug it in, and within about 5 minutes, it's ready to go. Through my own experiences, it was a very simple install. You plug it in, there'll be a prompt that comes up guiding you through the rest of the setup process. So it is a self-install. It is a online training. So you do access a training called the Learning Pathways. You do go through some self-learning of how to set up the printer, how to use the printer, how to use the wash unit, the cure unit. Pretty straightforward. They do have a very good support site as well. From a support standpoint, their DSP team is fairly strong. I've had very good experiences with their DSP team, but they don't have any field reps. So they do have some good account management that have been very good points of contact and very reactive. But they don't have anybody actually in the field. So ease of use, again, recurring theme that we've talked about multiple times here, very easy printer to use. And when it comes to cleanliness, I gave it a somewhat clean to clean process. We talked about the wash unit. We talked about going directly from the printer to the wash. It's a dunk tank. So when you start the wash, it lowers down and it agitates and it cleans. But that's a single wash. It's a single cycle. So many have chosen to go through a multi-stage wash. And so either a manual process or actually multiple form washes in series. So you can have a dirty wash, a less dirty wash, a secondary wash, and then a final wash. And what that really does is kind of help preserve IPA. And if you get into multiple washes, now you're moving something multiple times. There's just more opportunity for there to be a little bit of a messier process. So somewhat clean to clean process, depending on how you decide to do it. The build platform is actually the biggest of all of them out there. So I can easily fit 6 models, sometimes 7 or 8, depending on the size of the arch. It's almost 6 inches by 6 inches. So it's got a very nice big build platform. It has a very good finish quality, so XY resolution, especially being an SLA printer. It really does have a very nice, smooth finish, but it is pretty slow. That has always been kind of part of Formlabs is good print, easy system, a little bit slower. So as you look at the rest of the package, materials, we talked about the proprietary cartridge system. They have a lot of materials available, still a little bit limited with just overall availability of what's there. You get one choice and that's about it. For the printer package, your printer, your wash unit, your cure unit, a cartridge of resin, kind of everything you need to get started. Really good price point, $6,300. So at the end of the day, when you look at Formlabs and say, what tool is this? What hammer am I picking up off the shelf here? Really good printer, really easy to use. Because of speed and materials, it's a really good entry point into 3D printing. So if you're just dipping a toe, or if you're going to have a pretty low throughput, you may find this to be printer of choice for you. And so that kind of wraps up Formlabs, and we'll get into the next one here. So next up on the list is SprintRay, where Formlabs was kind of the original 3D printer. SprintRay kind of picked up the ball and ran with it from there. So they've done a lot of really good things. They are a dental specific company, meaning that's their sole focus. They don't branch out into multi-industry. Because of that, they've asked and heard from the dental community and helped use that to kind of create their brand. Products on the market right now, you got the Pro 95S and Pro 55S. I'll talk a little bit about those in a second. You have a Pro Wash and Dry. Try that again. Oh, well, apparently those all don't want to pop up. Pro Wash and Dry and Pro Cure. Those are the wash unit and cure unit. So again, they have a 3-part system. We'll talk about the wash in a second as well. Their software, Rayware, well-written, good software. Let me hop into that one and kind of walk you through what it looks like. So let me share my screen. You should be able to see that now. Looks very similar to what you saw on a preform. They all kind of mirror each other. There's a virtual build platform. When I bring in files, so let's do that first completed model first. You can see it positioned it automatically horizontally on the build platform. And then I have the option to base it as well. So if I wanted to base it, I could just simply select my base, drop it down to the build platform. What you'll see is where before with Formlabs, we were looking about an hour or so. Here, I've dropped down 20 minutes. So I'm now at 40 minutes, a bit faster printer. So that would be with the single model that we looked at. If I erase that and look at other functionality. So here was that night guard that I had designed and brought in. So if I just want to flip that over to the correct surface to change materials, I simply would come to my list here, select it from the list. Here's my thicknesses, and I would hit apply. And then I can do the same thing with supports. Generate my supports, ready to go. Pretty easy application in terms of software as well. And they as well, like Formlabs, if I bring in a file, something that they have taken and really advanced and really made it easy for people to use. You don't have to worry about a lot of team training, things like that. If I were to bring in a raw file, they have that little fix button. I click fix. Now I have a printable model. That's it. Software did it all for me. I probably have a little excess material on here. So if I wanted to, I can actually use their plane cut tool. And with a couple clicks of the button, not only do I have a solid model, but now I have subtracted a little bit of that excess. And you can see now print time's down, getting into the 20-minute range, 25-minute range. I can be a little bit more efficient and maximize time with it. So that's kind of a little bit about preform. Let's hop back in and look at SprintRay Materials, which they have an abundance of. They have done a very, very nice job of creating a full library of materials. So not only does SprintRay have their whole lineup, and you can kind of see their dental model, rather than having 2, they have 5. They have a couple of different type of night guard materials. They have surgical guide. They have their denture, tooth and denture base materials, called Onyx. they've really kind of put together a pretty robust library. And they also, if you look at that little asterisk, they also have a full library of third-party resins, so Denka and Bago and others that you can, if you like SprintRay's resins, they're available. If you look at some of their third-party resins, they have a very large inventory of resins to choose from. So what makes SprintRay unique? At the beginning, you saw that there were two products in that family, two printers. So you have the Pro 95S and the Pro 55S. Think of it, as siblings. So the Pro 95S is meant for throughput. It is your general printer. It's kind of the jack of all trades. It is your go-to. It's got a nice big build platform. It prints rather quickly. It prints all the same materials, but it is geared towards being able to produce a lot higher throughput. The Pro 55, and I should have noted, the Pro 95, that stands for the pixel size. So you're dealing with a 95 micron pixel. So a little bit larger pixels mean that you can shed more light at a time, but you're going to lose just a touch of resolution. When you look at the Pro 55 micron pixel, it's geared towards accuracy, that XY resolution to really make a sharp, good print. That's going to be geared towards more, rather than general construction, more trim work. Looking at permanent crowns or dentures or full arch surgical guides, things that have to be a little bit higher resolution. So they really have two different printers that they can both do the same thing, one geared towards throughput, one geared towards resolution. So that kind of separates them a little bit as well, because you have in the same family multiple opportunity with multiple different tools. I talked a lot about the wash unit already. It's a little bit more advanced, where Formlabs, the Form Wash was a dunk tank, a single dunk tank, single stage wash. SprintRay came along and put together a dual wash. So it's going to have a cycle that comes in, cleans the part. It's going to port back into stage one. Stage two comes over and does your finish cycle. So a little bit more of a robust wash unit. And that's really going to start to simplify processes. You'll see here at the end when I get to my review that really cleans up a process, because I go direct from the printer to the wash unit, both stages of the wash, and now I'm ready to go to the cure unit with a clean, dry part. We've talked a little bit about Rayware. I'm a big fan of their plane cut and the ability to fix a model without having to do any extra work. Especially if you're going to get into thermoformed appliances or just model creation, that really makes it easy for your team to be able to quickly and easily take a raw scan and with minimal effort get a 3D printed model. So I'm a big fan of their Rayware. And kind of as part of that, they also have this thing called SprintRay Dashboard. And they have, in that process, again, listened to the dental market, heard what they had to say. And one of the biggest deficiencies that was out there was design. How do I make whatever widget it is? So what they did is they created an opportunity through their design services to be able to take a scan, upload it to SprintRay Dashboard, have that go off to a designer. So you fill out an RX, it goes off to a designer, and they're able to push that right back down to the printer. So they kind of have a full circle of service as part of their package. And kind of overviewing the entire process, like others, you could do a drop ship. So it shows up in a couple boxes, you put it on a table, you plug it in, you follow a few prompts, and the printer is configured. Optionally, you also have a professional install. So if you are a hands-off person, don't want to touch it, you can opt for the professional install, in which case everything is done for you. Same thing with training. There is online training. It is very good, very robust. There's a lot of opportunity to go through and kind of self-educate. If you are again, a hands-off and want somebody to be a little bit more instructor-led, they have optional instructor-led training. Their service team, their support team, strong. Their field presence, strong. So they've really done a good job of creating a footprint out there in the dental space to be able to make sure that they have the highest quality install, training, and support all the way through. Ease of use. Because of the Pro Wash and Dry, this becomes a very easy process. The Rayware software, easy. The printer, press of a button. The the Pro Wash, two-stage wash, makes it very easy. Go to the Pro Cure, select your material. All the way through, it's just a very easy process. And because of the components of the system, it becomes a very clean process. Build platform on the 95 is pretty big. I kind of called it medium to medium large, just a little bit smaller than the Form 3, but still rather large. I can fit a lot of prints on there. The Pro 55, on the other hand, is rather small. Again, that's geared more towards resolution rather than throughput. Resolution on both kind of comes hand in hand. The 95, jack of all trades, good printer. 55, more geared towards that accuracy. So you're going to see a heightened resolution with the Pro 55. And then lastly, speed. I call it fast, right? So it's kind of medium, fast, because I'm able to produce things in a manner of which would allow me to now get into a same day type of workflow. So I'm not waiting an hour or longer to print some of these things. I'm able to do them in a manner where if I wanted to have a patient in the chair, that's now a reality. Materials, lots. We kind of talked a little bit about that. And then price points. So generally speaking, you will see SprintRay bundle their printer, wash unit, cure unit, a resin bundle, and a design bundle all into one big package. So when it shows up, you have everything you need from day one to get started. You don't have to think about design. You don't have to think about materials. It all shows up together. And you have some options of which you get to pick there. So largely it's a printer in a box, kind of jokingly said, but everything shows up and you are ready to rock and roll. So as you look at kind of the value proposition of SprintRay, it's easy to see, and anybody joining this webinar, if you've done any research on 3D printers, it's easy to see why SprintRay carries a lot of weight today. They've done a lot of things to progress 3D printing in the dental space. They've done a wonderful job of making sure that people recognize and understand what their printers can do. So it's no surprise that that's why they have a rather large market share out there, because they have done a lot of things to make printing really easy. So, okay, moving on to the next one. So Desktop Health, formerly EnvisionTech. Desktop Health bought EnvisionTech. So again, anybody that's been out there in the 3D printing world, EnvisionTech carried some weight to it. Desktop Health has taken a lot of what EnvisionTech done, and they have expanded upon it as well with their Einstein platform. So you have the Einstein printer. I'm just talking about this one. I know they have a couple other ones that are either geared towards larger production or even lab production. We're just going to talk about the Einstein. It's paired with the PWA 2000, stands for Parts Washing Apparatus 2000, and then a curing unit called the AutoFlash. So their software is called RP1, Envision RP1. I will jump over to that right now. And as we look at the RP1, similar to the other two, pretty easy to use. So as I look at bringing in the model that was already created, I drop it in to base it, select the little widget. There it is. The one big thing that you will see here, I'm under 20 minutes with my printer. Where I was at over an hour with Formlabs, that was at 38 minutes with SprintRay. I'm under 20 minutes with Einstein. So it is going to be a very fast printer. If I was going to switch materials and print a occlusal guard, same thing, I can drop it in. Now, they've also done some optimization with their software. So I could spin it around and create supports. They also have wizards down here where I simply just select what it is. Of course, it's not going to work. Maybe it would help if I set up the printer the right way. Forgive me. So when I go to my widget, I select Night Guard, I hit apply. The printer itself will optimize that print specifically for that material. So it knows the best way to print that material, where to position the supports. So by using that wizard, it's kind of a foolproof way to make sure you get a good print out of the printer itself. They do not have that plane cut tool that I looked at in both the Formlabs and SprintRay software. They do not have that feature in this software. So if you are looking to take a raw scan out of a digital impression scanner, you're going to have somewhere, some interface, whether that be something like MeshMixer or Tinkercad or another program of some kind to create that solid printable object. So you will find that Desktop Health is a very, very advanced printer, speed, accuracy, all of those things. But that requires a little bit more gifted hand at the CAD and CAM side of this. Back to the presentation, we'll carry on with materials. This is really one of Desktop Health's strongest suits is their resins. They've really put together a lot of fantastic resins. Models for accuracy, models for speed, night guards, surgical guides. I'm going to talk about Flexera here in a bit, but they also do have access to some third-party resins. So if you're getting into like Keysplint or Keystone Materials, some of that stuff, and kind of talking about, I'm going to skip back to this one just a second, talking about materials. If you're starting to think dentures and starting to think like that's something I want to do, the Flexera material that they have for dentures is wonderful. It's a fantastic material, and a lot of the reason why is when you print this, it's less permeable to moisture and to bacteria. And what that really means is it doesn't stink and it doesn't break down. So if you're thinking denture creation, that Flexera material really becomes very, very attractive. Not only is it aesthetically pleasing, but because of how it's created, because of the material behind it, the science behind it, becomes a long-lasting denture material as well. The other one, and a little inside joke here, but Einstein does shoot in a 385 wavelength rather than a 405. What that does is that makes it a little bit clearer, a little bit crisper. It cures more thoroughly all the way through. So it does have that kind of sharpened wavelength, which will put out a clearer spot, a clearer part. So if you're going to do heavy occlusal guards, things like that, that may be something that you consider as well. Okay, back through there. Lastly, so the Mod Institute is not specific or exclusive to Desktop Health, but Wally Renee, who is the founder of the Mod Institute, is partnered with and a speaker for Desktop Health. So his exposure to that product, his knowledge of that product is pretty fantastic. And the Mod Institute, as you look at 3D printing and expanding what you do with it, is a wonderful resource to be able to go out, spend time with like-minded dentists, learn from like-minded dentists, and really advance your knowledge of how to do this stuff. So if you're a tinkerer, if you are somebody that wants to do a lot of design and really dive into the depth of 3D printing, that's a key partnership to kind of remember because those two kind of do go hand in hand. Again, not exclusive, but very much a strong working partnership. So Desktop Health, and kind of running through the last of it here, self-install, guided process, very similar to everybody else. Training is going to be virtual only. Pretty good training regimen. Again, you will find that it is a very advanced product. So your knowledge of having to run those things, it becomes a little bit more. Support is good, and they have a smaller group of field reps, but they are very talented individuals. I know many of them personally, and so they are upstanding people, very knowledgeable in their trade. So they do have field reps, but they just have fewer than SprintRay out. Ease of use, it's somewhat average. Again, advanced products, so you have to have a little bit more knowledge. And when you look at the process of it, it becomes just a little bit messier than some of the printers we've spoken about before. The main reason for that is the PWA, dunk tank, so a single stage wash, but it is not integrated with the build platform. So to get to the point where you can wash a part, you have to actually scrape the part off of the build platform and put it into the wash unit. Not a huge deal, but just something you need to be aware of as you go into it, kind of expectation setting. Build platform, medium to large, it's a pretty big build platform. And when you saw some of the impressive speeds coming out of that printer, that is going to give you a tremendously high throughput. So shorter print times, big build platform, you're going to be able to produce a lot, especially if you start to think about the creation of a lot of models. So maybe in the orthodontic world or clear aligners, it could be orthodontics or GP. As you look at higher throughputs, that printer is going to be able to do a lot. And it's a very accurate printer on top of that. Materials, they have a lot of their own, and they do have some third party. And then when you look at the printer package, printer, wash unit, cure unit, a little bit of resin to boot, it's going to really put you in the $15,000 to $16,000 price point range. That's kind of where you can expect to see it. And to kind of finish off with desktop health, advanced printer for advanced applications, especially if you're looking high throughput and denture creation, it's going to become a very attractive system to look at. So we have just one more, and I'm keeping an eye on the time because I don't want to keep everybody too late tonight. But I would be, last but certainly not least, Dentsply Sirona. Of course, they just, if you are on any social media anywhere, they came out with the Prime Print, just released it not too awfully long ago, so relatively new to the marketplace, but of course made big splashes along the way. It was only a matter of time before Sirona got in the game, so they have come out with the Prime Print and with their what they call their PPU or post-processing unit. New products, so I don't even have my license for InLab 22 yet, so unfortunately I can't show you what it looks like. Good news is it's going to operate very similar to everything you've seen. There's an interface where you are able to nest models or nest whatever it is. There's some optimization that comes with that. So look for that in the future. Hopefully we'll be able to maybe add some supplemental video or something to kind of show that interface. But for today, that's about all I got. Materials wise, the whole theme of the Sirona Prime is that they want a touchless workflow. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But it's a cartridge-driven system where once you load the cartridge, you never touch it again. Good and bad, right? You don't touch it again. They are still working on development of having a more robust portfolio of resins. So you have some model resins, you have some tray resins, you have some surgical guide and occlusal guard, but it is slowly being built out to be a little bit more robust than where it is today. When you look at the Sirona product, they are the only company on the market to have a complete digital workflow from scanning. So either with, so you have the CEREC Prime Scan or a Sirona Cone Beam, and to be able to pair those two together. It does come with CEREC InLab 22, so it does come with its own design software. It's the only one that has its own design software. A mill, printer, imaging software. It's the only one all tied through DS Core, which is basically a data warehouse to house all of that information. I'm not going to get too far into DS Core tonight. But it's the only one that has the entire ecosystem together. So if integration is your thing, keep an ear open. And as you look at the Prime Print itself, what Sirona wanted to do was come out and they wanted to create a completely touchless workflow. Cartridge driven, you install a cartridge. That little Brita water pitcher looking thing is the print box. You install it in the machine, shut the door, set it, forget it. You don't touch it. When you're done printing, you grab the handle, so there's no need for gloves, mask, anything else. There's no contamination. Moves over to the PPU. And then those two little black containers you see are two-stage wash. So it'll wash in one, it'll wash in the other. It'll be wind dried, air dried, and ready to go. So that part, when you finally touch it, is completely finished. They have created a completely touchless workflow. If you are the type of office that wants to have that touchless workflow, you don't want to have to worry about those different things, this may very well be the product you've been looking for. So as you overview where we are with Dentsply Sirona, it is a professional install. There will be some training that is offered. There will be some online learning opportunity. Support going to be through Henry Schein. And of course, Dentsply Sirona does have a very strong, very active, very vocal field team. So you will have field representation as well. Because of what they've created, it's a very touchless workflow that makes it very, very easy to use printer. And because it's touchless, it's also a very, very clean workflow all the way through. Touchless. There shouldn't be any mess at all. Build platform is small to medium. It's not the biggest build platform, but it's meant to be a print as you go. You're not supposed to be nesting a whole bunch of. That's kind of the mantra of it. Is you're not supposed to put a ton of prints on here and be concerned with putting everything on at one time and hitting print. Print as you go. Very good resolution. Speed's okay. Speed's medium. So you're still going to be able to do some of those applications for same day. May not be as fast as some of the other ones, but still going to be able to be that same day type of process that you've been looking for. You are going to have a proprietary cartridge system that is still going to be rather limited right now, but expect them to continue to be a little bit more robust. And as you look at their package, there's trade-offs, right? Touchless system, you don't have to do anything, but it is a rather pricey system. So $29.5 is the actual price for the printer and the PPU. It does require a DS Core subscription. It does require some nitrogen that helps actually clean the parts off. I wasn't going to dive too far into the technical stuff, but in terms of having a finished, complete medical grade part, nitrogen is also necessary. And if you're going to use in lab, you also need a computer, whether you source it through Dentsply Sirona or whether you get your own. So it is a rather pricey system, but you're paying for convenience because it is a very, very easy system to use. So trade-offs, right? And so the people that are going to look for this, if you are looking for maximum ease of use, if you are looking for maximum integration with your Sirona products, expect this to be a huge hit with anybody that has an existing Dentsply Sirona ecosystem. Or if you are that person that wants to get heavy into design and do your own stuff, because it comes with CEREC and Lab 22, you're going to have maximum opportunity to be able to do a lot of those things yourself. Okay, I'm at about 45 minutes in, and I think we are all the way through all of the stuff. And so that just leaves now what questions are left out there for you. So I did want to take a time before we get too far on my next slide here. If you want to reach out to me, if you have questions on the left-hand side, send me an email. If you want to explore your situation and have a little bit deeper conversation about what is specific to you and yours, on the right-hand side, there should be an opportunity to schedule. It'll actually give you access to my calendar, of which you can schedule time with me. And then before we close and go to, I thought I had one more. There we go. I know this slide looks like I'm questioning whether I'm thinking, but make it certain. Thank you for joining. I appreciate, I'm very passionate about these topics. So very appreciative of you hopping on and spending a little bit of time. Very appreciative for Henry Schein letting me say a lot of words, especially after hours. But I do want to open it up. I do want to give opportunity for you all to have your voices heard, and I will answer everything I can to the very best of my knowledge. So if anybody has any questions, please fire away.
Thanks, Jeff. All right. So as a reminder, everyone, you can ask a question utilizing the Have a Question widget on the right-hand side of your screen. We do have a few lined up for you, though, Jeff, that came in throughout the presentation. So the first one is from Amy, who asked, is SprintRay dental specific?
Yes. So SprintRay as a company is only in the dental space. And so that is, they are dental only, not multi-industry. So they are a dental specific printer.
Great. Our next question is asking about the price of the printers. I know you mentioned that on a few slides, and they kind of vary by printer, but what's the range, would you say, on the printers that you spoke about today?
Yeah, sure. And to briefly recap where we've been, Formlabs, about $6,300 for their total package. SprintRay is going to be about 15 to 16. Desktop Health, kind of that same price point, that 15 to 16 price range. And then Sirona is going to end up being around 30 to 35 by the time they're all
All right, thank you. Our next question is from Lester, who asks, how are bite registrations incorporated into the design process, primarily for night guards?
Sure. So starting back at the digital impression part of that, you should be capturing a upper, a lower, and your occlusal bite, both sides if you're doing full arch. That's going to go into the design process. So now you start talking leaving scanning, going into design, and going through the CAD process, of which there you can manipulate the bite. So depending on what software or what program you're using, if you wanted to open the bite, if you wanted to do any mandibular protrusion, if you wanted to do any guidance, those would all be elements of the design software that you're using. The printer just prints what you tell it to. So don't give too much to the printer. That's all done in the design software itself. And if you want to explore that one more, that would be a good one to either email me or hop on the schedule, and we can talk a little bit more about that.
All right. This is a good one to piggyback from Jeff. How hard is it to do all of your own designing?
Yeah, I think Dr. Dalen's a St. Louis guy. So, hey, Dr. Dalen. Dr. Dalen is not, Dr. Dalen, excuse me. Designing your own stuff is not overly difficult. A lot of it is optimized workflows. A lot of it is just takes time. And so the question becomes really twofold. Is that your time? Is that something you could delegate? If it's something like a surgical guide, my guess is no. If that's something like an occlusal guard, maybe. It just depends on the level of function that is needed. Is that something that could be either taught or trained, or is that something where the burden of design would fall on you? Designing itself is usually not much more. Like if you take an occlusal guard, for example, and so if you paired it with your Trios and did Split Studio, you can design an occlusal guard in probably 5 to 7 minutes and have a pretty good working design. It's just a matter of, again, who is going to do that work? Is that you or your team?
Thanks, Jeff. Our next question is from Kurt, who asks, what printer do you recommend specifically for surgical guides? Is there a specific one that you would recommend?
That's a loaded question. I think it depends on, if you're just doing surgical guides, how many? Because if you're going to do onesie-twosie surgical guides, Formlabs is an excellent printer. If you're going to starting to get into volume and start to mix in other stuff, that may be where you look at SprintRay or Desktop Health, or if you're in a completely Sirona environment where you're combining a prime scan with a Sirona cone beam inside Nexus, now you have guided workflows that you can do all the way through. So sorry for a little bit of a circular answer, but it could be in any application, either of those four. I would encourage you to go back and look at considerations for scanners when we talked about finding the right tool for the job. Is it a big job? Is it a small job? Is it a job that you're trying to incorporate other parts of the family or not? I think once you start to answer those questions, the answer probably becomes a little bit more clear. So again, apologies for the circular answer, but without more, can't really tell
you. All right. Will asks, do I still need to take an analog impression for a fully indentilus? I may be mispronouncing that, so my apologies, patient.
So I was expecting somebody to ask the denture question, and Will, you're the guy. I will give you my opinion as long as you put that little asterisk next to it. I still am not a huge fan of a completely edentulous digital denture workflow. The challenge has nothing to do with printing. The challenge has nothing to really do with design. It has to do with information capture on the front end. When I take a traditional impression, the mouth is at rest. I'm able to capture, especially on the mandible, the mandibular ridge, the vestibule. Those are at rest, and I'm able to capture those more accurately. When I take a digital impression, I don't care what scanner it is. The mouth is open, the mouth is active. And as you move tissue around, so cheeks, tongues, the opportunity to flatten that vestibule out, the opportunity to distort information increases and could basically blow up the whole scan. Second part of that is if I was able to capture 100% accurate mandible, 100% accurate maxilla, I still have to put them in relation with each other. How do you establish the vertical? If you can do that, now I can move through the rest of the workflow. So to come full circle and answer your question, I would still take probably a traditional impression. If you wanted to pour up stone and scan that to get that into a digital workflow, cool. But dentures are still very case specific. I know there's probably the people that disagree with me on that, but I find it to be still very case specific.
All right. Our next question is from Michael, who asks, how much weight in the decision do you place on the future of each manufacturer to come out with new resin products, such as clear aligner resin and flex partial or crown and bridge resin?
Great question. Depends on what you're doing. So I know, and I was not going to introduce tonight because I'm not sure it's my information to share, but I know a couple of the companies that we spoke about this evening are close to a clear aligner material. I know that is right around the corner. No, you're not going to get from me who it is. But I know that is coming close. Clear aligners are going to be the next big arms race. You saw Sirona coming out with their Lucitone denture material. So that's going to start to bridge that gap with a true flexible denture or partial. Denture in materials is the arm race right now. Who can develop new and better materials? One of those is going to be permanent crown and bridge. We can do permanent crowns today. They're just not very strong. They look great. The fit is amazing because you're doing a additive technology rather than subtractive. So fit's amazing. Aesthetic is good. It's just strength lacks. So you're starting to see a lot of 3D printed crowns in the penal system, the VA system, teaching hospitals, community health centers, free clinics. You're starting to see those applications as materials get a little bit better. But as you put your weight into it and as you weigh out your decision points, because of a cartridge delivery system, those companies either have to verify somebody else's material in their machine or they have to create it themselves. So if they don't create it themselves, they're probably going to come further along down the launch train than ones that are open vat systems. So take that for what it's worth. If you put it into a proprietary delivery system, that means you have to either create it yourself or you have to verify it in your machine. So take that one for what it's worth.
All right. I think that wraps up our Q&A session. Oh, we just had one more come in if you have time for it, Jeff. From Kent, who asks, of the 4 printers, which ones include design software for night guards and surgical guides? Do any of them?
Really? So Formlabs is a printer. SprintRay is a printer, though SprintRay has design services. It's not something that you are designing yourself. Sirona has InLab. So they would be, instead of a 0, you really have a 1 there, right? So Sirona is the only printer out there that is also associated with a design software. Everybody else, think of buying a printer from Office Depot. It doesn't come with Microsoft Word. It just prints whatever document you create. Sirona is the only one that actually has a design software that comes with it.
Okay, that officially wraps up our Q&A session. So thank you, Jeff, for the insightful information this evening. And thank you to everyone for attending and the great engagement tonight. We also did record tonight's webinar and we'll be emailing the recording out sometime in the next week. If you are interested in attending future webinars, please visit www.henryscheindental.com/webinars. Lastly, we do appreciate your feedback via our survey that will pop up on your screen shortly. Thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on future webinars. And Jeff, thank you again so much for your time and insight tonight.
Appreciate y'all very much. Have a great evening.